Happy Hump Day, everybody. Schuyler Callihan here on Between the Ears, and portal season is officially underway. And this is something we all knew it was going to come. Probably just felt like it was going to wait. We were going to wait and see, or at least for most of these kids on the roster, they were going to wait and see who the actual head coach was going to be. And after a couple of days, Seth Wilson becomes the first Mountaineer in the portal. Seth played 3 years in Morgantown, always a bench player, got a few starts here and there, but mainly a guy that I never personally thought reached his potential. And that's not a knock on the kid. I just don't know that he was set up to be successful, to be honest with you. Year one, it's always tough to play. Year two, I think he started to show some signs here and there. Of course, the one game where he had 5 threes, I believe it was Texas Tech or Oklahoma State on the road, and started to piece it together. And then when everything went to hell last summer, again, you can't really blame him or anybody else for how this past season went. So I think had everything been normal, maybe things would be a little bit different. Again, in that same breath, you're probably talking about a lot of pieces remaining, like a Joe Toussaint and a Jose Perez and so on and so forth. So who knows what his playing time would have looked like. He may have ended up transferring regardless. But I think for Seth and for this program, I think it is a good decision for him to move on and see if he can go somewhere and get some playing time and what I believe will be his last year. So with that being said, I figured we'd take a look at the West Virginia roster and see what Darren DeVries has to work with and who may enter the portal, who we believe will probably stick around. So let's go ahead and jump in here and take a look at this roster. All righty, so we'll just go right here from top to bottom. These are in alphabetical order on the West Virginia roster. Jeremiah Bembry, Florida State transfer, didn't play, but in maybe a handful of games earlier on in the year. He's one that I wouldn't be surprised if he re-enters the portal. Didn't get a whole lot of burn, but that's not necessarily an indication that he can't play at this level or anything like that. But you're talking about a new coach coming in. Josh Schuyler and the previous staff identified him and believed that he'd be a good fit for what they were doing. I don't know that Darren DeVries is going to look at Jeremiah Bembry the same way, and especially with very little tape to go on, that's one that I would believe we could circle and say, you know what, he might re-enter, but he may not. I don't know really even how to project what his future is because of the very little action that we've seen him in, but he has the talent clearly, or else he wouldn't have been viewed as highly as he was at Florida State, and he wouldn't have been brought in last year by Josh Schuyler. So we'll see with Jeremiah Bembry, but I think he's definitely one that's kind of in that gray area, kind of on the fence. And this is just my opinion, not directly from him or anybody within the program, but I believe he's kind of that first one that's in the gray area. Noah Farrakhan, Eastern Michigan transfer. I think he's going to stay. That's kind of the indications that I've been getting. He's got 1 year left. He loves this program. He loves playing for the state. And I think it would really benefit Darren DeVries to have somebody like Noah on the roster who can be super athletic and get to the rim. He can shoot every now and then. I think he can shoot better than what we saw this past season. And I think he can even play defense a little bit better too. So again, he came in middle of the year and had to kind of just pick up as things were going on. So I think Noah is someone that'll stick around. Not 100% on that one. But the next one, JoJo Harris, absolutely. I don't see Josiah bouncing. He does have the ability to graduate, even if the two-time transfer rule came into play. Obviously, he's never transferred yet, but even if he wanted to, or even if he did, he could transfer again anyway because he's already graduated. He graduated as a sophomore, which is incredible. It speaks to the level of IQ that he has. But he's somebody that just feels like an ultimate glue guy and somebody that DeVries and this new staff can really inherit and embrace. He's a leader. He's an energetic guy. And let's be honest, he started to play really good basketball down the stretch. And I think his best basketball is ahead of him as well. So Josiah Harris, I've got probably the most confidence at anybody on this roster that he'll stick around. Kobe Johnson, I'd be willing to bet that Kobe's going to stay. Again, another guy that's been here. He's been through everything. He's played for Hugs. He's stuck around for Eilert. He's been through the ups of making the NCAA tournament. He's been through the downs of this past year. I don't see why a kid like that is chosen to remain despite all the chaotic craziness that has gone down in the last 12 months, why he would want to move. But it is his last year. Maybe he feels that he can go somewhere else and have a better chance of making the tournament. So there's always that kind of in the background, but I believe Kobe will stick around. Kirk Kriisa, have absolutely no idea. No clue. He's one that could go pro overseas. He could come back and stay at West Virginia and be the leader of this group. Or he could re-enter the portal and go somewhere else. He's the one that has the most options. And I really don't think we saw the best version of Kirk Kriisa this past year. There's a lot of reasons for that. I do think if he comes back, that you would see a much improved Kerr. You would see a player that is probably more confident and feels much better in the role that he'd be playing in versus the one that he was asked to play in this past year. And that's not a knock on Josh. That's just the personnel situation that they had. I mean, early on, they didn't have anybody. Even when he was coming back from his suspension, they were still battling depth issues, and they did all year. So when you don't have the right people around you, it kind of makes it tough to play your type of game. When he was at Arizona, he was a pass-first guard that could shoot and could shoot at a very efficient rate. This year, he still shot the ball well, but I think he kind of stepped outside of his comfort zone because they needed him to. They needed him to score baskets. Does he feel like he could come back and improve his stock? I don't know. You know, I think it's pretty clear, and I don't want to ever say never, but I think it's pretty clear that Kerr's not an NBA guy. So is he going to be able to, make more money in NIL here for a year than he would overseas? Would coming back also help his stock to go overseas and maybe play in a more advanced league and get more money? I don't know. Kerr's the tricky one. I think that's the one that I really have no idea. Ofri Neve. Yeah, this one, it's kind of back to the Jeremiah Bembry feel, right? Ofri was somebody they brought in very, very last minute, very late in the summer, mainly to help with depth. But he's got a lot of raw talent. It's just, I don't know how long it's going to take for him to get to the point where you can really count on him and rely on him. He's got a lot of filling out to do. He's got to clean up some of his game on the offensive end. He's got the skills. I don't know if it's too long of a project for Darren DeVries, but maybe too, if you're thinking about filling this roster with a bunch of transfers, then you would have the benefit of kind of sitting and developing a guy like Ofri. So I don't really know about Ofri. I would say, again, probably just the same thing I said about Jeremiah Bembry. Kind of that guy would be in that gray area. Ali Ragab, he was a walk-on, so we're not really going to discuss him. Pat Sumnick, he's a guy that can come back, and I kind of view him in the same way of Josiah Harris in that he's that glue type of guy. He's somebody everybody rallies around. He's not the big rah-rah guy, but he can really rally a team. And I think Darren DeVries can see that. I think this is going to be more of, is Pat going to want to come back or not? There's going to be a bunch of new faces on this roster. There's no question about that. But I think Darren's going to be somebody that looks at the guys that do have eligibility left and say, hey, are you willing to come back? Versus, hey, I'm bringing in a bunch of guys, you might as well leave. I don't think that's going to be the case. So with Pat, again, he doesn't have a whole lot of options. It's either come back to West Virginia or go to the portal. So I think he's going to stick it out and see what happens. But he's also got to have that conversation with Darren. What's that role going to look like for him? How many players in the front court are they expecting to bring in? If they're bringing in 5 or 6, then yeah, I mean, Pat, you might as well look for somewhere else to play that final year. But I think he's someone that would probably choose to stay here if the role makes sense for him. Aiden Tagaloa Nelson, goodness gracious, what do you say about this? I mean, you're talking about a safety on the football team coming over in the middle of the year. Got a couple of games of action, but I mean, what the hell do you think about this? I mean, I think this was probably always a 1-year deal with Aiden. I don't know that Darren's going to honor that commitment for the next 3 years, especially when he's going to have a bunch of guys that he could potentially bring in that backcourt. I don't know. I mean, he is on scholarship with the football team, so it's not like you have to worry about that. If anything, he sticks around as a depth guy, as a the so-called walk-on. He's on scholarship, like I said, with football. But I think that could really honestly come down to 2 things. One, what's his actual future like with this program? Is he going to get much playing time? Is there any chance that he could develop into, a role player or anything like that? Because, like I said, there's going to be potentially 4 or 5 or more guards that are going to enter the program. What's that look like for him? Secondly, is it just better for him to just focus solely on football? Is that where his focus needs to be? My guess, my assumption is that is the case, and that he should just focus on football. But if the kid wants to play, let him play. So I think it'll kind of just be a similar situation. Darren will lay out the role. Aiden will have that opportunity to say, yes, I'll stick around, or no. And if not, it's not really going to hurt the team. If he does stick around, again, it's not hurting the scholarship numbers. And then obviously Seth Wilson, who we just talked about there at the opening of the show, who will be entering the portal. So a lot of new pieces are going to be coming in the next coming weeks. A lot of players potentially entering the portal. Tucker DeVries, Darren's son, is expected to follow him to West Virginia. So technically, we've already got one on the plus side of the portal, one on the minus side, and we'll continue to follow this thing as we go here throughout the next month or so. So thank you guys for tuning into today's episode of Between Ears. Make sure you go to our YouTube page where you can find all of our shows exclusively at Mountaineers Now. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up as well, and go follow us on X at that same handle. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Take care.